Welcome to the channel's book club. It was Laurie Moore, the American writer of humorous short stories, who said, "A novel is a film." Well, the interesting movie watching feeling is the feeling you get when you read Nike Campbell Fatoki's historical fiction novel titled Thread of Gold Beads. The book was selected as one of our top 10 books for 2013. We invited Princess Irede Abumere, one of our reviewers on this show, to join us to discuss Nike's book and African literature in general. Princess is a freelance journalist, social media consultant, and an avid reader. We'll be right back after this break. Thread of Gold Beads. This is one of my all-time favorite books. So we're going to review this. But before then, let's talk about you. Let's start from you.
Okay.
What's your story? I know you do a lot of reading, you do a lot of writing, you do freelance journalism.
Yes.
And you are big on the social media, if
Not that big.
I may put it that way.
Not that big.
So tell us a bit about yourself.
I'm a storyteller. I'm a lover of African culture, and I mean music, literature, and I feel like we have 1,001 stories to tell, and I see myself as a freelance journalist who has this duty to document our lives and show them out to people.
Okay. Okay, so how did you get Thread of Gold Beads, or how did you stumble into the Thread of Gold Beads? Did somebody recommend it to you?
Yes.
What's that story?
Okay, so I was reading this book called, I like to challenge myself, right? I was reading this book called Introduction to Western Music and Art, because I'm getting into the art scene. And then it was a difficult read. And then I mentioned it to one of my friends, and he's like, yes, just go read this book, Thread of Gold Beads, go get it. And he recommended another book as well. So I went to the store, got this book at 10 a.m. in the morning. By 11 p.m. that same day, I was done.
Wow.
One day.
It took me about 3 days to read.
It took me one day.
We're coming back to Thread of Gold Beads.
Okay.
Prior to then, what did you used to read? Were you very much into African literature, or you read more foreign literature?
I read everything. My grandfather, Michael Mana, he's late now. He's a writer himself, and he was once principal of King's College. So he's very much about his book. So it's a situation where if you go to the house to see Grandpa, prepare yourself. You're going home with a book. The next time you see him, you have to give him a review. Tell him what you read. Tell him what you understood about the book. So I'd say I started off with, of course, foreign stuff. But eventually, with time, I moved on to, and with, of course, going to secondary school here in Nigeria, I moved on, got into African literature as well.
What's your take on African literature? I mean, there's a whole lot of viewpoints with regards to the way African literature has developed over the decades, and particularly Nigerian literature. Nowadays, we have the famous Chimamanda Adichie's and so on. And back then, we had the Achebes and the Soyinkas and so on. What do you think about African literature, and particularly about Nigerian literature?
It's exciting. It's exciting in the sense that our stories are not just for us here at home. It's for everyone. It's for the international market. It's like us. I don't know. This is a way to just get us there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's get into Thread of Gold Beads now.
Okay.
Tell me your impression about this book. How did you find it? The experience of reading it.
It was really easy to read, but the way Nike Campbell Fatoki goes in the book is like you don't know what direction she's going in. You're like, okay, as soon as you think, oh, I know what's going to happen next, she throws in some suspense, or she throws in a surprise, and then you're taken back and you're like, you know what, I can't drop this book. I have to get to the end of this. I have to see what happens at the end.
I'm guessing there's so many people out there, who have never heard about this title.
Okay.
Never seen this book before. Let's start with a general overview of the book. Can you summarize the story of Thread of Gold Beads?
It's a story about family, love, betrayal, cultural heritage, history, and it focuses on this princess called Amelia and how she moves from Dahomey in Benin Republic. She moves over to Nigeria, she moves to Abeokuta, and then eventually moves over to Lagos, and eventually starts another journey again.
You know why I got caught up in the book.
Why?
The idea of historical fiction
Yes.
appealed to me a lot because before reading this book, I knew very little about Dahomey. I didn't know there was a French Dahomey War. Most people will know Dahomey now as
Yes.
Benin Republic.
Yes, yes.
I didn't know there was a war back then. I didn't see the relationship between Dahomey and Abeokuta here in Nigeria. So I found it very enlightening. Usually, when I read fiction novels,
Yes.
The ones that appeal to me most are those that tell stories of history. Tell stories. So I found that here in this book, and when I started reading it, I just couldn't stop because apart from the entertainment dimension to the book, there was a lot of history there.
Yes.
Did you experience that?
Yes, there was a lot of history, and back to what I said about cultural heritage. In this book, Nika is so descriptive. She describes how they're married rites. She describes like the religious rites, how people are like hiding their Christians, whereas they're still like traditional worshippers. She describes like how the girls go to the stream to shower, and like how like actually they're different days. So the girls go on this day, the boys go on this day, and then like the mother and child relationship, and just like their way of life, their dressing, their culture. It's amazing. It's really good. Really, really good.
How about the fact that she told the story of Amelia the princess.
Yes.
By the way, you're a princess. she told the story of Amelia, how Amelia left Dahomey,
Yes.
came to Abeokuta,
Yes.
eventually ended up in Lagos, if I can remember very well. I think the story ended up in Lagos.
Yes.
In Lagos. That the way she described Dahomey and Abeokuta and Lagos, I felt the reader who probably never visited any of those places will get almost an accurate picture of how those places looked back then. Did you notice that?
Yes, clearly, like in the 1890s, most times, because we just have these buildings around us, we just think, oh, these buildings have always been here. But she describes it. She describes the forest, the bush, Amelia, and then Amelia's maiden, Yemisi, and another one of Amelia's friend, Namasim, and how they run through the forest and they go into the forbidden forest where they're not supposed to be, how they run into the soldiers. It's like there's nature around them, there's fresh air around them, there's life around them.
Cool. There are so many interesting aspects to this book.
There.
But which is your favorite?
Ooh, there's so many. I feel like we should issue a disclaimer to people at home that this is a spoiler alert. But I mean, they've had time to read this book. It's been out since 2013. Sorry, you've had 2 years to read it. Now I'm going to read it for you. What do I like? I liked the part when the family moves to the palace and they're settling into their new life. And I like how Nika describes that they're like hidden parts, like hidden chambers through the palace. And Amelia actually takes her time out to go and find this part. I like when they get to Abeokuta, when Amelia and her brother Dari get to Abeokuta, and eventually she finds out, well, this takes a long time, but she finds out that the woman who took her in, Madame Titilayo, is actually her mother's blood sister. It's like destiny and circumstances of life. And then I love the part where there's the confrontation where she's had her baby's died, and she's still sad about it. But eventually she finds out that her son is alive and she's been in contact with him all this time without actually knowing. I like the part where she finds her husband again. Yes.